Hey everyone, I've got something super cool for you today on Mog's English Pod. We're going to dive into something that affects literally every single one of us.
That's right. And I'm actually really excited about this one because we're talking about daily routines and all the useful English vocabulary that goes with them.
Oh my gosh, totally. I think this is going to be perfect for our listeners because these are words and phrases they can use literally every single day.
Exactly. And the best part is, we're breaking it down into morning, afternoon, and evening routines with some really practical vocabulary that you can start using right away.
Plus, we're going to share our own personal routines, which, let me tell you, are pretty interesting. So, Alex, I'm dying to know about your morning routine. Like, how do you kickstart your day?
Well, first thing I do is actually meditate for about 15 minutes. It's like, totally changed my life. I used to jump straight into checking my phone, but now I take that time to clear my head and set intentions for the day.
Oh, wow, that's actually super interesting. I've been trying to get into meditation, but I always end up falling back asleep. Instead, I start with a huge glass of water and some light stretching.
That's really smart, actually. Staying hydrated is so important. After meditation, I head straight to the kitchen and whip up this amazing overnight oats that I prepped the night before.
Okay, you've got to tell me more about these overnight oats. I usually just grab a quick smoothie because, well, mornings are pretty hectic for me.
See? That's why I love overnight oats. You just prepare them the night before with some oats, almond milk, chia seeds, and whatever fruits you like. Then in the morning, it's ready to go.
That sounds way more organized than my morning chaos. But hey, after my smoothie, I actually do something pretty consistent. I go for a 20-minute jog around the neighborhood.
No way! I actually hit the gym 3 mornings a week, but on other days, I just do some quick yoga at home. It's all about finding what works for you, right?
Absolutely. And I've noticed that exercise in the morning really helps me feel more energized throughout the day.
Oh, totally. It's like it sets the tone for everything else. Plus, getting that natural endorphin boost first thing? Game changer.
All right, let's dive into some super useful vocabulary from our morning routine chat. First up is kickstart, which means to get something started or begin something with energy.
Yeah, like when I said I kickstart my day with meditation. Another great word we used is whip up, which means to prepare something quickly, especially food.
Oh yeah, like when you mentioned whipping up those overnight oats. Let's have our listeners practice these words. Repeat after me. Kickstart. Whip up.
Now, we also talked about hectic, which means really busy or full of activity. Like when you mentioned your hectic mornings.
Exactly. And here's another good one. Endorphin boost. Endorphins are those feel-good chemicals in our body, and a boost is a sudden increase. Together, they describe that amazing feeling after exercise.
Speaking of exercise, let's look at consistent, which means doing something regularly or in the same way. Like how you consistently go for your morning jog.
And don't forget set intentions. This means to decide what you want to accomplish or focus on, just like how Alex uses meditation to set intentions for the day.
Let's have our listeners practice these words too. Ready? Repeat. Hectic. Endorphin boost. Consistent. Set intentions.
Oh, and one more really useful phrase. Finding what works for you. This means discovering the best method or routine that suits your personal needs and lifestyle.
Totally. Because everyone's morning routine is different, right? It's all about finding that perfect balance for yourself.
So, let's talk about our afternoon routines. I've actually made some really interesting changes to mine lately.
Oh yeah? I'm super curious about that. What's working for you these days?
Well, I've totally switched up my lunch habits. I used to just grab whatever was quick, But now I'm all about light, energizing meals. Like today, I had this amazing quinoa bowl with roasted veggies.
That's actually really smart. I do something similar. I've found that heavy lunches just make me feel so sluggish in the afternoon. I usually go for a protein-packed salad or a light sandwich.
Exactly. And speaking of staying energized, I've started taking these mini breaks every hour or so, just stepping away from my desk for like 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh, those micro breaks are absolutely game-changing. I actually use this thing called the Pomodoro technique, where I work for 25 minutes and then take a quick 5-minute breather.
That's so interesting. What do you usually do during those breaks?
Well, I either do some quick stretches or, honestly, just walk around my apartment. Sometimes I'll even step outside for some fresh air. It's amazing how much it helps with my focus.
I've noticed something similar. And you know what else I've started doing? I keep this huge water bottle at my desk, trying to stay hydrated throughout the afternoon.
That's such a good habit. I actually set reminders on my phone because I used to completely forget about drinking water when I got caught up in work.
It's crazy how much difference these small changes make, right? Like my energy levels are so much more stable now.
Totally! And that's what it's all about. Finding those strategies that keep you productive without burning out.
All right. Now let's break down some super useful vocabulary from our afternoon routine chat. First up is the word sluggish, when you're feeling slow and lacking energy.
Exactly. Like when I said heavy lunches make me feel sluggish. Let's have our listeners repeat this word, sluggish.
Our next word is energizing, which means giving you more energy and making you feel more active.
Right. Like in your example of having an energizing lunch with that quinoa bowl. Everyone, let's say it together. Energizing.
Here's a great one, micro breaks. It's basically short breaks throughout your day, like those 5-minute pauses we talked about.
Totally. And remember how I mentioned the Pomodoro technique? That's a perfect example of using micro breaks. Let's practice micro breaks.
Another important word is hydrated, which means having enough water in your body.
Like when you mentioned keeping that huge water bottle at your desk to stay hydrated. Everyone repeat hydrated.
And finally, let's look at productive, being efficient and getting lots of work done.
Yeah, like when we talked about finding strategies to stay productive without burning out. One more time, productive.
Oh, and speaking of burning out, that's our bonus phrase. It means becoming so tired and stressed that you can't work effectively anymore.
That's such an important one for everyone to know. Last repeat, burning out.
So, let's talk about our evening routines. I'm really curious about how you wind down after a busy day, Alex.
Well, first things first, I'm totally committed to having dinner at a reasonable time, usually around 6:30. I've found that eating too late just messes with my sleep, you know?
Oh my gosh, same here. What kind of dinner do you usually go for?
I try to keep it light but satisfying. Like, I'll usually have some grilled protein with lots of veggies. And then, this is super important, I completely avoid caffeine after 4 p.m.
That's so smart. I actually started doing something similar, but I've also been getting into this whole evening ritual thing. Like, around 8 p.m., I dim all the lights in my apartment and switch my phone to night mode.
Oh, that's brilliant. I do something similar. Actually, I've got this rule where I stop looking at screens about an hour before bed. Instead, I'll read a book or sometimes I do some light stretching.
That's exactly what I need to start doing. But you know what's been absolutely game-changing for me? Having this evening planning session.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
So, I take about 15 minutes to plan out the next day, write in my journal, and set out my clothes. It just makes my mornings so much smoother.
I totally get that. I'm big on evening prep too. And here's something I started recently. I make this calming chamomile tea and do some deep breathing exercises. Really helps signal to my body that it's time to wind down.
That sounds so peaceful. I've noticed that having these evening routines, they're not just about getting ready for bed. They're really about setting yourself up for success the next day.
Exactly, and keeping it consistent is key. I try to be in bed by 10:30 every night, which gives me plenty of time to decompress and get quality sleep.
All right, let's dive into some super useful vocabulary from our evening routine chat.
First up, we've got the phrase wind down, which means to gradually relax or become less active at the end of the day. Like when I said I use chamomile tea to wind down.
Let's pause for 3 seconds to let everyone repeat wind down.
Next is decompress, which means to relax and release tension. In our chat, I mentioned needing time to decompress before bed.
Go ahead and repeat decompress.
Another great one is evening ritual, That's a set of actions you regularly perform in the evening. Like when you mentioned dimming the lights and switching your phone to night mode.
Take a moment to say evening ritual.
Oh, and here's a really useful one. Game changing, which means something that dramatically changes a situation. You use this when talking about your evening planning session.
Everyone repeat game changing.
And finally, we've got setting yourself up for success, which means preparing things in advance to increase your chances of doing well.
One last time, repeat setting yourself up for success.
These phrases are super practical because they're all connected to establishing good evening habits. Like, when I'm trying to wind down, I'm actually setting myself up for success the next day.
Exactly. And having an evening ritual helps us decompress, which is totally game-changing for getting better sleep. Well, that's all we've got for you today on Mog's English Pod.
Yeah, we've covered so many useful phrases about daily routines, from energize and kickstart in the morning,
to power through and recharge in the afternoon.
and finally, wind down and decompress in the evening. I'm absolutely loving how these all connect to real-life situations.
Totally. And remember, these aren't just random vocabulary words. They're phrases you can start using right away in your daily life.
Oh, and if you've enjoyed learning with us today, make sure to follow Mog's English Pod wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll catch you next time with another super interesting topic. Until then, keep practicing those daily routines.
See you soon, everyone!